Hi, this is Scott. I really appreciate our sponsors because they make the show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Developer Express. Become a UI superhero with Dev Express controls and libraries. Deliver elegant .NET solutions that address customer needs today. By leveraging your existing knowledge, you can build next-generation touch-enabled solutions for tomorrow. You can download your free 30-day trial at dx.hanselminutes.com. That's dx.hanselminutes.com.
From hanselminutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 460. In this episode, Scott talks with nGen Works founder Carl Smith about where he thinks web design and development are heading in 2015.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes, and I'm talking with Carl Smith, web designer extraordinaire and advisor to nGen Works. How are you?
I'm good, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm okay, and I'm excited to talk to you because you are always have some really neat ideas about web design and where it's going, whether it be the business model or the style or whatever. And since we're closing 2014, or depending on when I publish this show, welcome to 2015. I figured we'd talk about web design in 2015. Where do you think it's going?
That sounds great to me. I tell you what, 2014 was a crazy year. In the web design space, if you had a shop, there was a good chance you had a layoff or your best year ever. And I did a lot of research on that, talked to almost 140 owners, and still can't figure out what the hell happened.
So why such extremes? Like I did see a lot of people saying like this was the year of templatization, and then web design was under respected. And I don't need a web designer. I'll just pay $10 or I'll bootstrap it.
Well, and here's the best part. The best templates were built by those web design shops who are now being defeated by the templates they put out there because they had a slow week.
Ouch.
Yeah. So personally, I think the templates have a place in the industry. There are a lot of shops that can't afford a $30,000 website. They might not be custom. It might not be perfect, but it at least gets them a better start. Mm-hmm. And it gets them responsive where they wouldn't be otherwise. So it at least helps us get to a web that seems to work better. The thing that I found out talking through with a lot of the owners, the biggest difference between shops that were successful and shops that struggled was if they had a specialty or if they were a generalist. And the generalist shops seemed screwed. And I'll tell you, my company that I started, nGen Works, we had a layoff. Ouch. I mean, it was one of those things. You've got a lot of big companies that are building in-house teams now, and they don't really see the value in a generalist. But if you're a specialist, and that could be that you focus on an industry like healthcare, or you have a certain technology like Django, or you might have a certain discipline like UX, they still see value in those people. But in the generalist shop space, you seem to be losing.
Do you think that what I call the rise of the front-end developer means that there are, I wouldn't say too many, but an awful lot of people who know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Like it's almost, and I'm not trying to disrespect those people, so bear with me here, but like I blinked and everyone is going and learning front-end web development, maybe because server-side web development's harder or less accessible, or you can't just open a notepad and type Node, you know what I mean? So we're really front-end heavy right now.
Yeah, no, we totally are. The other thing that the generalists deal with is front-end designers can put up a website real quick and look just as good as a shop that's 15 years old. Yeesh. And they can put whatever price point they want there, especially if they're a solo flyer. Now, what I've seen on the dev shops is a lot of them are getting acquired. You've got, same thing with UX shops and some of the specialty shops, but I think customer or clients, what we would have called clients now, who are, traditional companies, are smarter, and they realize they're going to have ongoing development needs. Mm-hmm. But one of the things they want is, instead of just a design, they kind of want a design system now. So you can hand over things. Trent Walton at Paravel, who worked with Microsoft actually on the new Microsoft site, Trent was talking about how that's most of what they get asked for now is design systems. So they may do a few pages to show things, but it's really a lot more about these are the types elements, these are the ways you're going to use them. It's a true system.
What's the new Google flat design thing? That's a system, right? For people who are listening who may not be familiar with this concept, like it's like a branding book. Like this is.
It is. And if you look at Apple and the way that Apple gives different direction on iOS and they ask you to try to adhere to these different standards, which if you don't, you just don't get in the store a lot of times. But that's exactly right. You have some of the big players, which we actually affectionately refer to as the bigs, that are starting to work this way as well.
Material design. That's what it's called.
That's material design?
Right. I think that's the Google kind of design system now.
Oh,
like,
gotcha.
People are saying like, you can, how do you make your app look and feel and fit within the Google brand? Like if Google were going to come up with another app.
So it's almost like a visual language in that sense, not a visual programming language, but
exactly
a way to say these things will feel familiar and will be more readily adopted by the people you're trying to reach.
Do you all have like a cabal, or do you get together and decide like here's flat is the new black?
Oh, man.
3D beveled is the new black. When are you all deciding that? Because it seems like the designers, I'm noticing new things as a user that I don't like.
Drop shadows are coming back. I want you to know that. We've been talking about it, and beveled edges never went away. It's weird. It's a copycat industry. That's one of the things that bugs me. Hero images gave way to hero videos.
Oh, the hero. Can we just pause for a second and just
get rid of it? What
are we doing? I do not need a blurry full screen MP4 that's looped of like, you've gone from, clip art where it's like women laughing while drinking coffee has now become women laughing while looking at tablets alone. And now it's looped videos of women laughing with tablets. PayPal is the worst offender.
That one person in this gigantic office who's walking by and you're like, poor bastard. Why do you have to work today? Everybody else was either laid off or left and you're just still there. Yeah. That is the nature. One of the things that bugs me the most about the industry is we're lazy. And I get in a lot of trouble when I say this, but it's true. We will lean on best practices. We will use responsive web design as an excuse for not being able to do original things. And I really hope in 2015 that shifts. In the UK, they haven't leaned on it as much as we have in the US. But it used to be we would tell clients they couldn't do things because of web standards, right? Before that, it was, well, Flash is evil. So unfortunately, we can't do animation, and over time, all these things become part of an acceptable tool set. So you can do them. So I really hope in 2015 we see original design come back. I mean, let's do some things that enhance the message and enhance the content, not over the top. And like you said, the hijack scroll, it's like, really?
Yeah.
Scroll
hijacking. I went to, Bill Gates just released one of the Gates notes that he does every year. And when I showed up there, I was kind of staring at this giant hero image and this big web font. And then I'm like, what do I do now? And there's an actual circle with an arrow pointing down and it says scroll now. I'm like, really? Like your design does not inspire me to scroll. Therefore, you put a giant arrow pointing down saying scroll now. But what you said about being lazy is really interesting. Like, we can't do animation. I just had Rachel Neighbors on the show and she was kind of talking about how the industry, kind of pushed out all the Flash designers because the Flash tech was out of vogue. But that didn't mean that the techniques that the Flash developers had designed and come up with were out of vogue, but we pushed them out of the industry anyway. And then people don't realize, we can do this with CSS animation. We do have the technology. We're just too lazy to do it.
Yeah. And you wonder whatever happened. I mean, I actually saw one of the people from Too Advanced maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And that was the Flash shop. I mean, we used to have jokes that if you were to go into one of their presentations to a client, there's like somebody behind the guy presenting going, and they're just like moving these boards all around because the stuff they would do was insane, but it was strictly entertainment. Yeah. There was no way you could look at that as some sort of transfer of information. It was more of a transfer of a feeling. I mean, you were going to enjoy it. But I think Rachel's absolutely right. There was no reason to get rid of some of the concepts. Although I'll say this too. There's no point in having Flash type animations on Khan Academy, right? You have to know the context of what you're trying to get across. So maybe actually there would be if you were showing some sort of a chemical reaction or you're trying to show something like that. Maybe it's really applicable. We actually had a rule where if we didn't think that the client was in an industry where Flash was really going to help them, we just wouldn't do it. We had a woman who imported furniture from Italy, and she really wanted this crazy Flash site. And we were like, the people that can afford your furniture are really old. You're going to hurt their eyes. This is not working. But if you were a bar, oh man, we were going to trick that thing out.
Skip intro.
Yeah, exactly. We had a superhero we created called Skip Intro.
You had that was his name, Skip.
Yeah, we
intro?
drew him up. It was Skip Intro. Yeah, yeah, I love that guy.
That's actually a very good idea. One of the things that I'm surprised about, and again, I understand that you're a design insider, so you're not only dropping names I don't know, but you're dropping names of companies I don't know. So I'm going to ask you to explain who those people are, because people who are listening won't know either. But why is it that the things that we think we want from a design perspective, like Minority Report and the TV style animations, where the most significant thing are transitions between states? Like, that's the thing about television and movie computers, is they all have very fluid transitions, and the only fluid transition that seems to be left on the planet is minimizing a window on a Mac. And it does the little genie thing. You know what I mean? And no one else from, I've got a brand new build here, a public build of Windows 10. And again, the only cool animation is the minimizing animation. Why are we so lazy from a transitions perspective as we move from page to page or from state to state? We do this for the movies, but we won't do it for the application that we use every day. Does that mean that those are fun to watch in a movie, but if you sat in front of an animated transition system 8 hours a day, you'd start to go nuts?
I would have to agree that that's the situation. I mean, we've done a ton of user testing where we sit with people on their own equipment and watch it. And, we'll have them open some other apps that they use and different things. And one of the things we'll see is they turn off transitions.
Really?
Like, people will find a way to turn off those transitions. Like, when that version of iOS came out on the Mac that had all those crazy transitions going around, one of the first things that hit Twitter was how to turn it off. Because it was just, it was slowing people down. And I think there are people who love those types of transitions, but I don't think they're in the majority. I actually met a guy, I'm blocking on his name now, but he does nothing but design user interfaces for the movies.
Yeah, I saw that. He had a blog, didn't he? And it had a whole, here's all the cool stuff I did for the movies. Yeah,
he did, it was, shoot, I'm totally blocking on it now, but it was Avatar. He did all that stuff for Avatar. And he said one of the amazing things is, as he's trying to think through what we'll want in the future, he gets so much pushback that it's not cool enough. And so you have to go with the extra pulse and the different things. But, to your point, if you look back at Star Trek, like the original Star Trek with Shatner, they had those little square floppy drives that were used, right?
Yeah, they're little, basically an SD card or a CF card, the size thing. Very prescient.
We grew up, a lot of us that were the nerds that became nerd designers, right? We grew up with that stuff, so I think it was always in our mind, and we just wanted to make it real.
Well, and like the LCARS, LCARS, that's the Star Trek Next Generation style of kind of colorful design.
Yeah.
That's something that sneaks its way in, that we don't realize. Library Computer Access and Retrieval System. If you go and search for that, that's like the, unlabeled buttons of a certain color and a certain color tone. And, you think it would be an awesome idea. And they had like iPads, 30 years before anyone had thought of an iPad. On the transitions side, I was watching Star Wars with the kids, the original 1977 Star Wars.
Okay.
And this is what, 30, almost 40 years old now, right? And the transitions that they would do they would do wipes, big, star wipe or big wedge wipe or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was very jarring. And then after the fifth or sixth one, I was like, this is not cool. Like, I want a jump cut, like just click and go to the next scene.
It's one of the few things in the original Star Wars that doesn't hold up.
That's an interesting point, because from a practical effects, their practical effects are so good, you think they're CGI.
Yep.
But their wipes make it look dated.
My 11-year-old daughter was in a verbal discussion that got a little heated with a 13-year-old friend of hers because her friend said she didn't understand why everybody thought Star Wars was so great. And I actually heard her say something I probably said at one point, but she goes, because it holds up. What they did back then determined what we do today. And, and she just went off on it. And I was just like, you look at the original Battlestar or Star Trek, and obviously they weren't in that same space. And I mean, I don't know that Lucas had a whole lot of money, but he had a whole lot of heart, man. Yeah. And the effort that they put into that and the way that they combined all the different media, and that, I think that still reflects back to the web. We've got all these different techniques.
The combination, I think you're right. Like it's a subtle effect and a subtle, timeless style. If you look at things like Indiana Jones, those things hold up. So what are great web things from the 90s and the early 2000s that hold up today?
Wow, that's a great question. It's, there's certain things that just haven't really changed much. And whenever we try to change them, they fall back. Like
white space.
Like navigation.
Yeah.
Right?
The whole left side, left rail, whether it be a hidden left rail that slides in, there's always a left rail or a top rail. There's
designated content area. I mean, it's not unlike a book in that way that you've got to cover in pages and you're going to go left to right.
Will we hit a plateau? Like, are we trying to make this thing something that it's not? Like, why do we need to keep pushing the web? Are you web designers, just so bored that you need to come up with a new crazy thing like scroll jacking?
I really don't think it's that we get so bored, because the thing is, there's so many new devices that keep coming out. I think part of it, like you look at wearables, right? Okay. There are a lot of shops that are starting to position themselves right now. I see generalist shops starting to position themselves with wearables. They may just be doing a blog post on wearables. They may be talking to a designer from another shop who's designed for wearables. There's a great shop in Austin, Texas called Fun Size, which I think is the ultimate name.
That is a pretty good name. Although I'm not sure who decided that was the size of fun, because fun size is always the smallest candy.
There you go. But yeah, so I think part of what happens is, we keep trying to fit the same ideas into different shapes. And that's where Ethan Marcotte, who was the guy who came up with responsive web design, when he actually coined that term and started looking at the math and figuring out doing things based on breakpoints instead of actual sizes, that really opened up just everybody's minds to what we had to start doing. I mean, there's sites now that'll work on an 80-inch screen and on, a smaller, older Android device.
Yeah, I think that definitely responsive design is a fantastic idea that has not yet even been like touched. Like, you can do the basics, portrait and landscape, but I've seen some really cool sites do transitions as you go from portrait to landscape.
Yeah.
And we'll just rearrange things. Like, those are transitions I can really get behind and feel positive about.
When those are people who are trying, right?
Yeah.
They're going to put that extra effort in. We used to have a saying that the work doesn't start until the client's happy, right? As soon as the client's okay, then we're going to see how much more we can fit into this to make it just a happy design. Something that makes somebody, go, wow, I didn't expect that. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes because we started as Flash designers. So that was always the thing we were looking for. So it's funny when Rachel says we all got run out, a lot of us just changed clothes really quickly. And we're still here. But I think responsive and all of the new devices that are out there, a lot of that keeps us from rethinking the way that we're delivering the messages, because we're having to stand on our toes to make sure it's consistent.
Yeah. I think also that we don't think about new input devices enough. I mean, we're still kind of stuck on touch and mouse, but I think we're going to see more gesture-based things. I think one of the reasons that this is my opinion, that the Google Glass didn't really jump was the interaction model just didn't work. You could never get the thing to activate effectively, and you'd see people just kind of flipping their heads back trying to get the thing, you know what I mean? Trying to get the thing to wake up and listen.
That's what was wrong with that guy. I was at an event and somebody had Google Glass and I watched him doing that and I was like, I think he's having an episode, but
no,
I don't want to.
He couldn't get the thing to wake up.
Now I know. If you look at the Xbox Connect, that device was so much more powerful than any of the technology Xbox actually put out for it. I saw a lot of the software developers who grabbed it and did things with it. There was one game, and I'm blocking on the name for it, that was for the Xbox. And I remember I downloaded it after reading about it, and you could just control all of these different elements in the game with your body gestures. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was an example of where the hardware is probably there, but the software, no one has any idea how to use it.
Yeah, and they don't know if it's going to sell, so there's not a business case. It's like, to hell with that.
You know the Leap Motion? Have you used this?
No.
The Leap Motion is a tiny, tiny device. I'm holding it up to you. It looks like a stick of gum, and you hold it in front of your computer, and it sends IR beams up in the air, and you move your hand around. And it's one of those demos, like, you remember the first time 3 or 4 years ago that you saw that it was an Israeli company that had a little device that would project a laser outline of a keyboard on your desk. And
absolutely.
We all, like, the internet's brain just collectively exploded because the demo was epic. But then when you used it, it's like, no, slapping your fingers on a hardwood desk is a dumb way to type.
It's not going to work.
And that was the greatest, and now it's just like in the Sharper image catalog.
Right.
So this thing went from like internet darling to piece of tchotchke that's just sitting in a catalog.
That I see every time I get stuck on Southwest Airlines.
Right. The Leap Motion hardware, epic. The implementation of the software just involves me flailing in front of the screen and then giving up. And I did a blog post about it where I said, Leap Motion, amazing, revolutionary, useless. And it's sitting here unplugged because here's an example where some genius hardware people came up with a way to notice your hands.
Right.
But they couldn't figure out the way to make the interaction model work. And everyone wants, everyone wants Minority Report, but nobody wants Gorilla Arms.
That's absolutely it. I forget we were, and that gets back to the Kinect, playing with the kids. And in my experience, kids will give up on something way before adults. They'll be like, this is stupid. This doesn't make sense.
Adults should do that more.
Yeah, I forget what game we were playing. It might have been Wipeout. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing funner than watching somebody try to jump across 5 big red balls, right? I mean, it's just hilarious to watch them get hurt. So then you try to do this in your house. First of all, ceiling fans are a big issue. And you're like jumping and you're doing all this stuff. But to actually set the game up, you have gorilla arms. You have to move here, and then you're like, oh, I need to start back further, and I've got to shove over here. And by that time, you're back to Mario Kart.
Yeah. I've got a 5-year-old who's a little short. So he's standing on an ottoman in front of the Kinect, and the Kinect is confused because his body splits into legs and then joins back together into some giant foot because it thinks that the ottoman is his foot, and the Kinect is confused about why he can't move this giant foot. And then, my wife is black, so it can't see her. And she's declared that the Kinect is racist now.
Racist.
And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not racist. I think it's just a lighting issue.
Can't see color.
She's like, I don't care. She's like, it's not working. It can't see me. So we're like adjusting spotlights to get the thing to work. And of course, firmware, and a year later it works. But the point is that the dream never quite matches up with the reality.
Yeah.
How many times have you had a design idea that you thought was going to be like amazing, and you showed it, and in A/B testing, it just didn't work?
I mean, dozens of times. I used to tell clients, the reason we test things is because we're wrong half the time. So you hired us. Let's make sure that we both know that we're doing something right. And even then, you've got to keep an eye on it once you roll it out. My daughter, again, my 11-year-old, at the time, I guess she would have been, whenever the first iPad came out, was it like 6 years ago? Mm-hmm. And I remember I got it and I was playing with it, and she looked at it and she asked me where the camera was. And I said, oh, it doesn't have a camera. This is more for consuming and playing. And she handed it back to me.
Seriously? Like she just declared, oh, no camera? Sorry.
She was like, no, and she went back to the phone, right? And then when the 2 came out, we just saw an ad for it on television, and she looked at me and she went, told you. And I was like, yeah, and Apple probably had that in a closet. They were just going to roll it out one different feature at a time so that those of us that are connected to them, by our jugular. I swear I have, if ever they unearth where I live, historians will think that there was an Apple store there. Because I probably have every device from 3 or 4 years ago.
The thing that's great about Apple is that these are the people that make you stand in line for something and think it's the greatest thing ever. And then when the next thing comes out, you look at the previous thing with disdain. Like, how did we ever survive with this crap?
What is this?
Is that a 5S?
It is.
Yeah. See, what is that? Yeah, what is that? We can't
What
use
is
that. That's garbage. I have a 6 Plus now, so
Yeah.
it's the perfect size. You know, and I look at the previous one. I can't even look at a 4S. Like, how did we squint at these? I think it's just me getting older. So maybe it's just Apple's aging demographic that just needs a larger screen.
One of my favorite things Apple's doing in the holiday season, and this is still a design thing. And I bet, I don't know if Jobs would have liked it or not. I ask myself that all the time now. Would Jobs have liked this? I don't know. I don't know the guy. But when you walk by the Apple store, so we have an outdoor mall. This is huge town center, and there's an Apple store, and then there's a Windows store just down from it, just like maybe not even a block on the other side. When you walk by the Apple store, there's a line out front that's kind of partitioned off, and there's a cop standing there. And then if you go on down to the Windows store, it's like 20 employees and a couple of people inside the store. There's like nobody there. You go back to the Apple store and you look inside, there's only 6 or 7 people shopping. What they've done is anybody who had a pre-order has to wait outside in a line.
I've seen that. Yes.
And
It's
I'm
like getting into the club.
It is. It's like when you own a restaurant that's not popular and you tell the employees to park in the front. You know, make it look like there's somebody here, for God's sakes. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you have ready to go for 2015? What web design thing does the web design mafia have that we're going to expect? Like, what's the most revolutionary thing you've seen? Maybe on a single individual's blog, like a designer, or you're like, oh, this is going to be something. Like, this is a technique or a style. Like, what about like responsive images people are talking about?
Yeah, responsive images are definitely something we're going to start seeing. You know, it's interesting. I think we'll see some people fall back to some older things like progressive enhancement or graceful degradation, as one camp called it.
What about progressive enhancement was going to be a thing and everyone was talking about it. Oh, you just check for features and then you progressively get better and mobile first. And then responsive design happened and then everyone forgot about progressive enhancement.
But if you start looking at some of the wearables, the responsive web design is just not going to work. You're going to have to find a way to get that information across, assuming people want to read a blog on their watch. You know, which I don't think they will.
I think it's about alerts, but I think there's another kind of interaction that we haven't thought about, because right now it's pretty clear that my band or my Fitbit or my Pebble, whatever, is a notification, right? You know, like the Microsoft Band has a color screen and a touch screen, and they call it a right wrist device. So the assumption is you have a watch on your left, and on the inside of your wrist, not the outside, is the more natural. You kind of go and look, oh, there's my notification. But what doesn't happen, the interaction model I think we haven't done is I touch something on my wrist and something happens on my phone. On
your phone.
Or I'm working on a design on my iPad. I'm stepping out the door. Why am I not lifting my hand up and somehow dragging it onto the phone and then leaving? The continuation is very blocky right now, right? We stick it in Dropbox and then we go and we
you do that. Actually, to that point, there's a group called Universal Mind, who's a group of they do iOS development, they do Android development, really big ticket stuff, and they're really on the forefront of some of this. I've seen them working with where they've put together like an iPad table. And as people are sitting around it, it could be playing cards. It could
be like a Surface.
It is. And so,
like the original Surface.
Like the original Surface, only it's the size of like a really big dining room table.
Oh, so it's really big.
It's really big. So you can have 15 or 20 people sitting around it. And if somebody wants to share a document, they kind of just hit it on the table and it goes in front of where the seats are. Right? And basically, if you put your phone down, it knows that there's somebody at that location.
You know, at Microsoft's got this thing called the Microsoft Home. It's like a pretend house that they built inside of a building, and then they put all the cool stuff there. So then when dignitaries and the Pope come, they run them through it. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is that making a giant table like that, the display technology doesn't exist, right? Right. So they mount tiny projectors on the ceiling. So imagine you're sitting in your kitchen and you're like, I need a recipe. And then it beams a picture of the recipe down onto the surface. But rather than doing a square window and projecting a monitor onto your surface, it does just the white text. So it appears as if the text is coming out of the marble of your counter. Right. It gives you the sense that your counter is this infinite screen.
That's a really cool way to go about it. But you're right with the the actual projection surfaces, they aren't working.
Well, and you just described the kind of thing that you'd see in a movie again, where you're like, let's plan how we're going to blow the world up, and let's all get in front of the giant table. And then what we don't have is the 3-dimensional thing that comes out of the table.
Right. Like you would see on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like that's one of their things that is pretty phenomenal looking.
Well, there's a thought that might actually be happening though. There's a new startup. I think the author Neil Stevenson just joined that startup. And they're talking about, what is it called? He just joined yesterday.
And Neil Stevenson, he wrote Snow Crash, right?
Yeah. And it's called Magic Leap is the new thing.
Everybody's using the leap word. What's
I don't know what the word leap is. Here we go. Magic leap is an arsenal of techniques to produce a synthesized light field that falls on the retina the same way as light is reflected from real objects. I think that's a fancy way of saying holograms.
There you go.
So I think the 3D table, could happen.
Yeah. I mean, and that would be amazing. What they've got at Universal Mind right now that I think is great is when you start looking at collaboration, those documents that you share, I don't know exactly how they have them hooked up, but it's almost like a shared document. So if somebody starts writing on it, it'll end up on the master and end up on the other ones that people are there. So for brainstorming and things like that, it's a pretty cool way to go.
Yeah. Using Google Docs or Office Online, the web versions, being able to type and see the other person type is so helpful because I'm a remote worker.
Yep.
The whole kind of like push save and hit refresh. No, I don't want to do any of that. I want to see your keys. I want 2 mice.
I want to send it to somebody and see them show up on the document.
Right.
And for remote workers, which that's another trend, I think we're going to see a lot more in the way of remote teams and remote teams that form with located teams at clients' locations and stuff. That type of technology. Yeah. That's critical.
Yeah. I know you're a big fan of Slack, right? The chat room for remote workers.
I actually work with Slack. I have Slack and HipChat open all the time, right next to each other, because half of the teams that I work with use HipChat and half of them use Slack. And it's really a wild situation because basically what they do is they kind of take the place of email and text and IM and all these other things. They're kind of, if you're a super nerd, they're kind of what IRC was back in the day. And some people still use that. But the things that I found is, first of all, Slack just got, I don't know how much it was. It was like $18 million, a ton in another round. And HipChat has gotten nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're owned by Atlassian. I'm not sure how you say it.
That frankly, it's over for everyone else that's not Slack. Slack is going to become the GitHub of that space.
And you know what sucks is HipChat has really good video chat.
Yeah, they do.
So if you're going with somebody and you just hit video, it'll open it up. It doesn't handle emojis as well. And I think that's where Slack won. Because emojis are worth millions of dollars, my friend.
Yeah, I hate to believe that, but you're right. And there's also other more real-time, more video thing, like bluejeans.com is a really amazing way to do video. But for some reason, I find that older people of my generation love video, and the young people, they like text. But all I do, if I'm typing to you, about the third sentence, my hands start to hurt. I'm like, I'm just going to pick up the phone and talk to this person. Why am I typing to you?
Well, and that's another thing I think we'll see next year, and we're already seeing it this year, is where people start to integrate with their own photos and their own videos. It's really easy now to grab different items and just throw them in on the fly. So Snapchat, the last update of Snapchat, you can actually put emojis in a picture with you. So if, and this is my 13-year-old is all about Snapchat. And so when she's doing a selfie, as she does, she'll put in like a big red representation of a guy walking behind her, and she'll be like,
like a cartoon,
like she's gotten scared by this graphic that looks like, except for being red, it came right off a street sign, like those slow kids who were always playing in the neighborhood. So that to me is kind of exciting when you start to see, again, it's a blending of different media. And really, that's all the hologram thing's going to be. It's going to be a new way to display the information, right? That's just super, super cool.
Yeah, I really hope that we have more ways to move, though, from device to device. Because if I'm going to have a desktop and a laptop and a tablet and a wearable and a phone or whatever, the idea of the feeling of like throw it up into the cloud and then bring it back down again. while that's probably what's going to happen in the background, it doesn't kind of feel right. So I think I'm looking forward to like Apple's, was it called continuum or continuity? This idea that I'm in one app here and I pick up right where I left off.
When you move, yeah.
Like right now, we're having a Skype, but I have to run. So what if I pick up my phone and then I just make a gesture and you're on my phone and then we keep going.
And then it just moves.
But no, I hang up and I'll call you back.
Yeah.
Right?
Which feels so rotary.
Well, it also feels unnatural because I'm leaving. Why aren't you coming with me?
Yeah. And I think that we'll see video games are going to lead that charge, right?
Yeah, that's true. Have you seen Smart Glass?
I've not seen Smart Glass.
So Smart Glass is really interesting. So if you play like Assassin's Creed or Halo or Call of Duty, you're sitting there in front of your Xbox and you're doing your thing. And then you're like, I wish I had a map of what I'm doing, like an actual map. Well, I've got this tablet. I just log in and immediately it knows I'm playing a game and it shows me where I'm at. It's like a GPS for your game. And it's the mini map that usually goes up on the screen, but it's on my tablet. But the great part is I can close down the app and still interact with the game on the tablet and then jump back in. I was watching Game of Thrones on my Xbox and I couldn't figure out who the heck that Targaryen was. I load up Smart Glass as a second screen and it puts up a family tree of the Game of Thrones characters.
Oh, that's amazing.
In context of the show I'm watching.
Right.
That's an interaction model that's from a technical perspective extremely hard.
Right.
But if they can make that easy to write to, that's going to completely change how we think about the web.
When it gives those enhancements. I think it was Lost was probably the first TV show that created that the Dharma initiative. Dharma was a real thing. You could log into the Dharma website. You could do all those things and they would do different updates throughout the show and these types of things. I think as much as you can make other devices an enhancement, it's just better. Monday Night Football was doing that for a I don't know that they still are.
If I'm watching football, why am I not getting a top level view with, icons moving around? And I know that baseball people have games like that, have real time, graphics of exactly what play is happening and they can fast forward in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll definitely see a lot more of that in 2015.
Very cool. Well, where can people find you online?
At Carl Smith, CARL Smith. I won't spell that one for you.
Well, I think we should have you on a regular basis, and because we could
I'd love to.
We could talk for hours. You'll be my design reporter.
There you go. I'd love to check in and let you know what's going on in the world of design.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Carl Smith, for coming on Hansel Minutes. This has been another episode, and we will see you again next week.